need these for our species to survive, obviously, but the dominant instinct and stacking of the instincts show the way in which we will be on autopilot and what we're doing unconsciously. Let's begin with self-pres. Spence, go ahead and just point out the key features of the self-preservation that proved to be true with the research and validated by Claudio Naranjo. By the way, he validated my research and findings.
Instinctual type has a fear of not surviving. They instinctively seek safe and comfortable environments and are drawn to situations and people that nourish, pamper, and/or protect them. They fiercely defend and protect their possessions and resources and may view their mate as one of their resources. They avoid situations that are threatening or interfere with their routines, comfort, or health. Their primary focus is on their fears, personal needs, concerns, and resources. They either share or hoard their resources for their future personal needs.
Yeah, you could always count on the self-pres bringing resources with them to an event. So they'd have backup water. And this is before we all carried water like we do now. They might have a thermos or something, and especially the self-pres is like, what if I'm thirsty? What if it's not available? What if we're not taking a break at that time? There could be any number of reasons. But some self-pres will hold on to what they have for fear that they won't have enough when they need it. Other self-pres will have brought plenty. In fact, self-pres sixes sometimes will bring a lot to share with others if they have social second, because it might be a value, knowing, well, gosh, I get hungry, other people get hungry, and okay, I don't want people to take mine, so I'll bring plenty. So don't think it's like that we ever deliberately exclude others. We're trying to understand them. One of the most common mistypings, self-preservation, or how they can mistype as sexual, is that some self-pres make their mate one of their resources. So they'll say, oh no, I'm sexual because I really count on this friend, I depend on this friend, or I count on my spouse or my mate, person I'm closest to. But we have to distinguish, is that person a resource, or do you need to share intimate thoughts or just your worries? If you need to share your worries, we all want to do that as human beings with our mate. But do you need to go deep and talk about things at a deeper level? Not necessarily, especially in a quarrel. The self-pres will want to get their rest first, and the sexual want to keep talking until everything's resolved, and then they can calm down. Another thing to consider is, what do you sacrifice for? And the self-pres sacrifices for themselves and their future. And this can be a compliment to a relationship, or it can be a bone of contention, because what do you choose to spend money on? Which resources have greater value? And even if it's two self-pres people, they might think, no, we need to eat better. Another might say, no, we need to rest more, or no, we need to tend to our physical body, we need to exercise more. So each self-pres person is going to be tracking their own set of values within the self-pres category. So sometimes you can have self-pres people that are like high-risk sports, and you think, wait, but the self-pres does not want to endanger their body. But they can be the opposite. They might be, health oriented, but then do these sports where they could die. But they love the thrill of excitement, the need for speed. It's very important to track why people are doing what they do, and to discover what they sacrifice for, because each instinct sacrifices for something different. The social sacrifices for the group. Okay, the group needs this. I don't want to do it, but I'm outvoted, and so you do it. Or you do it because you care about the future of the group and a sense of belonging. whereas the sexual sacrifices for their mate. And in ways the mate doesn't even notice, but they'll give up what they want to please their mate. Now, we all do that to a degree, like with my self-pres friends or my self-pres daughter-in-law. If they need a self-pres need met, I know if we meet that first, then we can have the sexual subtype closer dialogue and experience. But if we don't, and a self-pres friend or my daughter-in-law is worrying about their hunger or when we're going to eat or go do that, then I've lost them. I've lost the intimacy. So we can all adapt to the differences. But remember how I said two self-pres could be different? Well, two socials can be different also. They might, one might be social, the other antisocial. So Spencer, go ahead and read.
Okay, so this instinctual type has a fear of not belonging. They instinctively seek others as a means of survival. Safety and security come from joining with or avoiding others. They also seek protection by belonging to groups or institutions. Their primary focus is on their social standing, so they often choose jobs and mates with social standing in order to maintain their own. They avoid people and situations that threaten their place in their families, groups, or society. They want positive rapport, but will become adversarial or antisocial if needed to maintain their social standing.
So it will be in keeping with those they've chosen, those they respect, those that they identify with. So if their group becomes antisocial about a certain topic, they may as well. In fact, most of your activists are a combination of being positively identified to fight for something, but the others are negatively identified, so they're fighting for whatever they believe is important. And they will come together, and then once there are people that were neutral that choose a side, then usually there's change. Like in the 60s, when the hierarchy was that kids in universities needed to do what professors said, and professors didn't align with students and vice versa. But there was so much unrest. There was the Vietnam War. There were changes in the hierarchy. And at Berkeley, for example, the students protested and the professors agreed with the way they protested, which was nonviolent. And they talked about it in school. And that was a whole change in the hierarchy. And then that spread across all the universities in the US that we needed to talk about social change. And it was at the same time that psychology was going from being centered on nature, you were born with your personality, to wait a minute, yes, you're born with temperament and traits, but our life experiences can totally shape our reality. And this was based on all the twin studies in the 60s, where they took twins and triplets and consciously placed them in homes to show what was different. And like if they were put into a middle class household, if they were put into a lower class household, if they were privileged, just to see how the child turned out. Now, it was devastating for all these twins when they found their counterparts, their siblings, but it did show that as long as the child was happy, it didn't matter the class. It matters whether they could be who they wanted to be. And they even tried to choose the parents in terms of personality. But overall, if a child feels loved and seen, they're going to thrive. The important thing I already mentioned was the counterculture part of this social that won't think they're social. They're saying, oh no, I'm totally this, not that. But if they're dressing like their group, which we all do, by the way, you can kind of see a field, like people that have a mindset that's similar or have the same activities. They will dress for the activities of their group. So we all do that to a degree, or we can deliberately go against it. And if we go against it, it might not be in our best interest. So I'd much rather dress like myself. But when I was in the fashion industry as an executive, I had to show a certain kind of professionalism that was demanded of my position. So the first day when I would meet with people, because I'd usually work for a week at a time, I would do all the professional stuff. And then by the second day, I was talking about personality type because I studied them since I was a kid, but more specifically from the time I was 18 to 20. And I used it in management. So then when I'd say, yeah, but this personality wants to do this or that, and they go, oh, yeah. And then the next day or the next 4 days, I would dress more like me and it would be accepted. Or if I had to go into the Federal Reserve and teach Team 5, I dressed the way they would want me to. But there was still my personal style, which is more indicative of the sexual type. But you have to do that if you're going to succeed in certain positions. But in other careers, it might be more important to dress in an avant-garde way. And that's all important. I think I said everything, but the most important thing is that my mentioning that the social sacrifices for their group. Now, let me just clarify that the social person has chosen others. They aren't just any group. Now, some socials might just choose a group of someone or a group where people have shared interests or certain value, but others will choose certain people and make their own group, but they're still grouping. Okay, go ahead with the sexual, Spence.
This instinctual type has a fear of being undesirable. They instinctively seek a mate that is in sync with them. Being a part of a couple, pairing with an intimate, whether romantic, sexual, or platonic, is essential to survival. They seek closeness with desired others and devote their time to maintaining a sense of intimacy. They attract others through their ability to connect on a deep personal level, their intensity, and their individualistic use of adornment. The energetic imprint of the sexual type often reveals itself through the eyes. This energy is very selective, so they may also repel others. They only have time for deep, intense relationships.
Right. And a lot of times the sexual will suffer from people being confused by them, because when a sexual meets another sexual, it's like the energy rises, there's more laughter, there's more attunement, kind of that matching energy. Whereas the self-pres is more grounded. So if two self-pres come together, being solid and having all their ducks in order is very important to them. And the social has that split attention. So they're tracking the person they're talking to and what's happening with others. I once was in a group of Enneagram people, actually, and it was lunch, and a bunch of us who knew each other went to lunch together. And we were having such a great time that we just were focused on each other because most of us were sexual. But there was a social who was just mortified, noticing rather that people were waiting for a table and we were taking up a table of 10. And that we should probably get going. And it made that person anxious, whereas the sexuals didn't mean to, but we were so involved in the you and me, not just me. A lot of times people will say, well, yeah, I'm a sexual subtype. I really like this person. They really listen to me. They take care of me. Well, that's not sexual. It must be equal. It must be you share, I share. You share, I go deeper, then you go deeper. And you keep going, so you show more and more and more of yourself. But you can be attached or bonded to someone with any instinct. But we're talking about what you sacrifice for. And the sexual sacrifices for the relationship. And as I mentioned, in ways that the other instincts don't notice, like it might be just indulging their mate. with something, maybe they'd have a preference, but their mate really cares about something, so they'll just defer to their mate. Whereas they might not just defer to people in general, they might be polite, but when it comes to the mate, if they're not happy, the sexual type is not happy. And so they're going to try and negotiate that common ground so that intimacy can emerge, not just living life, but deeper meaning to things. And the other thing, it's based on this belief that my value is dependent upon how close I am to my intimate few. Like a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'm a sexual type and I'm close to all these people. Well, that's not sexual. We might be friendly and it might seem like we're self-revealing, especially if we have 4 in the Tritype. But the real innermost thoughts, no, they're for less than 5 people. And maybe only 2 that were totally forthcoming. Now, it does vary according to the Tritype and the lead type, but you will find that it varies. Please understand that whatever I say, it has more finesse than just one thing or another. There are exceptions. We can't take any of these details dogmatically. We have to see the overarching. You have to compare and contrast